human mind. What is the GFC about? It involves subprime mortgages, CDOs, frozen credit markets, and credit default swaps. And everyone was affected. Here's how it works. A family gets a down payment, sees a mortgage broker, who sees a mortgage lender, and voila, we have a mortgage. And the broker makes a cool commission. The family then buys a house. Housing prices keep rising. One day, the investment banker contacts the lender because he wants to buy the mortgage. The lender sells it to him for a nice commission. The investment banker then borrows millions and buys many more mortgages. He then gets monthly payments from all home owners. He then divides the contents of the box into different classes according to the risk and calls them CDOs. With ratings. Then sells it to investors, bankers, and hedge funds. And repays his loans. And one day they had a major idea, the subprime mortgage idea. And this was a major turning point. Everything is the same and the broker gets a commission. The lender sells the mortgage to the investment banker, converts it into a CDO and sells it to many people, making lots of money out of the risk of the subprime mortgage. Owners begin defaulting. These bank-owned mortgages turn into houses. Supply is greater than demand, the housing prices stop rising. Houses are now worthless and he tries selling it to investment banks and everyone else. But nobody wants it. He owes billions of dollars. He can't get rid of the CDOs. He's not the only one with the bonds because the investors have bought thousands of these bonds. He tries selling it to the investor, but the investor won't buy it. Lender tries to sell his mortgage, but the banker won't buy it, and the broker loses his job. Things get bleak, and then finance could be divided into two schools of thought: the rational agents camp and the behavioral finance camp. There are two popular narratives for the GFC, the bad incentives view and the bad models view, both of which do not suffice to explain why the crisis happened. As loss was homogeneous amidst a certain degree of awareness, delusion was definitely involved. Behavioral finance helps to explain the causes of this delusion that operated within and outside the banks. Within the banks. Cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the tendency to alter our belief systems to accommodate actions that clash with our positive self-image. As belief systems were altered, the ability to rationalize was shut down, and this made them oblivious to danger signs. Conformity. Conformity is the tendency to conform to the group's actions even if they conflict with rationality, and it is done to experience belongingness, which is a basic human need. And as groups in the financial system practiced widespread conformity, rationality was superseded by the psychological need to belong. Groupthink. Groupthink is a thought process where overall group cohesiveness is considered more significant than careful factual consideration, and in the GFC, groupthink was definitely a potent force within the financial system. A very recent example of groupthink would include the CIA assessment of the weaponry in Iraq, and groupthink was not just practiced within the financial system, as even political leaders chose to play along. Obedience. Obedience is the powerful psychological need to please authority figures, even if the tasks are perceived to be inappropriate, and this featured very prominently in the GFC, especially with powerful opinionated leaders like Stan O'Neill. Diffusion of responsibility. When many people contribute towards a flawed project, it is easier to maintain a false notion that nobody is at fault. And as the subprime mortgage model was multipartite, it made the transferring and displacing of the blame easy. Outside the banks. Other psychological factors include the drying up of trading activity in many debt markets, the deeply entrenched belief that housing prices would rise indefinitely, and the desire for individuals to take up large financially unsound loans. Lack of trust. People who trust less invest less, and there has been a general evaporation of the emotion of trust, which varies in developing and developed markets and from country to country. This could have its roots in self-preservation, which is a basic physiological human need. Ambiguity aversion. People avoid situations where there is the inability to assign probabilities to outcomes. This is cogently exhibited by the Ellsberg paradox and explains why traders have withdrawn from most markets. Representativeness. This is the tendency to spot patterns in data that is in fact random and trendless. This is a highly dangerous tendency and explains why several wrong assumptions were made about the housing prices. Overconfidence. Precision of forecasts is often overestimated, and this overconfidence may have created a heavy reliance on all the forecasts generated during the GFC and may have contributed to poor modeling as fat tails were not taken into account. Optimism. People tend to think that terrible things could not possibly happen to them and are unable to grapple with a situation where this could happen. Thus, a reasonable assessment of the risks involved in taking up a large mortgage were not made, and repercussions could not be handled appropriately. Diagnosis. Speculative booms are generally psychological events. Thus, psychological theories help produce a more holistic viewpoint, as the decisions made in the GFC were far from rational, as delusion took center stage. Rationality is a very contrived notion, as most psychological tendencies are deeply wired in our systems, and our Darwinian instincts are strong and homogeneous despite our origins and evolutionary patterns. We need to go beyond the subjective and supplement our psychological deficiencies with objective standards so as to avoid letting psychological idiosyncrasies affect our economy. To understand the flow of money, we need to understand the psychology of money. And to understand the psychology of money, we need to understand the psychology of the beings who govern its flow. And that takes us to human psychology. Thank you.